Recently, I've been playing a ton of Nova Roma, and I've had a lot of fun with it. But I've also learned a lot since I first started making cities. So, in this video, I want to teach you a few things about how to set your city up, so that hopefully you can avoid some of the mistakes that I made early on, and also, so hopefully you aren't as annoyed with the game's water system. This video is going to be split into roughly two parts. The first half is covering the basics, setting up your first city. I'm going to be breaking this into discrete steps, like setting up your industry or dealing with the gods, but realistically, as you're playing the game, you're going to be doing several things at once. It's just easier to demonstrate when I break it into those distinct steps. Then, the second half is going to be a little bit more advanced, talking about things like water management and a few tips and tricks that I've picked up along the way. And so, let's get right into it. So, the first decision that you need to make is placing an outpost. This is going to be your city's center, or at the very least, the first city center, because you can build more things later. Now, I like to place my outposts where I will have access to water. Water is very important for a growing city, and it's very important for fertile farmland. In addition, having something like stone, iron, marble, or wood nearby is also good. Though you don't necessarily need these permanent deposits right where you settle, because later on, you can always build a road and expand outwards from there. Early on, you're going to need a lot of construction supplies. This means wood and stone. And the best way to get it right at the start is using the clear land function. So this will allow your workers to target trees and cut them down, and target rocks and break them up. And later on, you will need to move to things like permanent stone deposits or using a forester. In the short term, if you just want to get your city up and running, this is a good place to start. Also, when it comes to early buildings, having a road is good because people travel faster when they're walking along a road. So doing something like this is beneficial. But you do not have to have a road. Your citizens can walk over the terrain. And so, for example, I don't need to place just a farm here. I can place a farm all the way over here, and people will just follow the road and then walk off of a road to get to the farm. This allows you to cover a lot more space, especially with buildings like farms. For houses, I do recommend placing them adjacent to a road because they get a happiness bonus. And if your citizens are unhappy, they're probably going to leave. Now, after you make your first couple houses and first couple farms, one of the earliest buildings that you want is a small temple. This allows you to dedicate it to a god, such as Jupiter here. Each of the gods offer you different bonuses, and each of the gods inflict penalties on your city if you ignore them. So Jupiter can improve citizen happiness around the temple. Thus, you want to build it near your houses. Vulcan improves fire-related industries, something like a charcoal burner. This wants to be built in an industrial district. Neptune can improve fishing yields, so build this near your fishing colony on the coast. Ceres improves farming, so you might want to build this around some fields. And Mars, the god of war, improves your military defenses, so build this near some walls and towers where you expect to be attacked. You will want to have temples to all of the gods fairly shortly after establishing your city. However, each temple can only be dedicated to one god, and to make things a little bit more complicated, you have to spend favor if you want to unlock the bonus. So to make these houses happier, costs 1 favor. In addition, if I was to build another small temple, it would cost 10 wood, 20 stone, and require a worker. In other words, you don't want to just build everything all at once, you want to build things as your city naturally grows. Another very important part of your early game setup is a well. This has two purposes. First of all, it provides water to houses. But second of all, if anything catches fire, this is where your citizens can become volunteer firefighters and use water from a well to put the fire out. That way a house doesn't burn down and people don't die. And in general, as the governor, or I should say as the semi-omniscient being ruling over this land, you don't want your people to die. Now, after you've set up the basics, it's time to start thinking about industry. Because, for example, in the winter, citizens have to burn fuel to heat their homes. And wood isn't that efficient, so there's a chance some of them will freeze to death, which is bad. So to solve that, you can turn wood into charcoal. This is a far more efficient fuel. The only problem with that is you need a way to get enough wood that you can burn a bunch of it. And so to do that, you use a forester. You want to place this, well, in the forest and generally farther away from your houses, like here, say. And in addition, I'm also going to place down a charcoal maker, though I need 15 stone for that. So what am I going to do? Harvest some rocks. Later on, it's going to be all about building quarries, but remember, quarries have to be staffed, whereas harvesting rocks, at least until you run out of rocks around your city, is kind of free. So a little time has passed. The forester is now built and staffed. And so I'm going to add a charcoal maker over here. Since charcoal makers have a happiness penalty due to how smoky they are, you don't want them right near your houses. That's why I'm building them away over here. In addition to that, I am also going to build another temple because remember, small temples to Vulcan can be used to provide a bonus to fire-related industries like the charcoal maker. I also intentionally positioned this near a stone deposit, so when I run out of free stone just on the floor, I can start building stone quarries here. All I have to do is extend my road. With the little +2 favor bonus, unlock favor of the gods, nearest buildings are enhanced, and I'll even make him an offering so that I get some more favor and I can unlock more things. The next thing I'm going to do is build a fishing hut. This requires 15 stone, so that's right, it's back to sending people to go break up some rocks. So here we go. I've put down a couple of hovels, a well, of course, have to deal with fires, fishing hut, and a small temple, which I'm going to dedicate to Neptune, the god of the sea. Now, if you're wondering, why did I make houses here instead of just relying on the labor here? Distance. The farther you are away from a house, the less efficient it is for the worker to work there. As you can see here, time working is cut into by time spent commuting all the way over here. So as more people live here, they can take care of the jobs in this area, and everyone who lives over here will work on places like farms, the forester, some stuff that I'm going to build. Basically, you want at least a few workers in your industrial areas, even if most of your workers and your best houses are in your city's center. But now that I've built everything, there's another problem. I'm farming wheat over here, which is a pretty short distance from most of my homes that are using it. But I'm making charcoal and getting fish way over here. So where's that going? Probably not to my city's center. That's a pretty long walk. So the next step, something that you can honestly do alongside industry if you have the resources, is setting up supply chains. That's something like a stockpile. This holds raw goods like wood and stone. A warehouse, this holds finished goods like charcoal. Or a granary, this holds food. But as you can see, they need quite a bit of stone, and in the case of a warehouse, even some gold. So let's set up a couple things first. First up, I'm going to make a small granary. This is another place to store food. And in addition, I'm going to add a small stockpile. And as soon as I have the gold, I'm going to make a small warehouse as well. And the granary has been completed. Now, one very important thing to do is assign certain slots to specific resources. Because with the way the game handles logistics, if you don't do this, and if you have an oversupply of something, your warehouse is just going to get filled with that. A good example of this, I get +9 wheat a year, and I get an unknown amount of fish. A lot of it's been going to waste. So if I just let it fill up, all of these slots might end up filled with fish. I would have no place to put the wheat, and then it would go to waste. Same thing here. I'm going to set some slots specifically for stone and wood. That way, I know it won't go to waste. And of course, as I expand my city later to harvest things like iron, marble, and clay, I would either change one of the slots over, like this, or I would build a new storage depot, possibly acting as a halfway point between where I'm harvesting it and where I'm using it, so that I can ultimately both store it efficiently and make sure I have a stockpile in case something happens. Like say there's a bad harvest one year, I want to have extra wheat around, I don't want my warehouse to just be full of fish. One of the mistakes that I made when I first started playing this game was just letting the game store stuff as much as it wants. Again, this can be a problem because you end up with an entire storage area completely full of one resource. So right now, maybe it's wheat, but then I start farming apples, and I wonder why year after year my apples sit at 0. The answer is because people would farm the apples, they would then go to waste in the fields because there's no place to store them. So avoid making the mistake that I made, set storage aside. Also, having a bit of overproduction is good, but you don't want a ton of overproduction. So about once a year, you should check your report and see, okay, well, plus 14 wood based on last year to this year. A bunch was used in construction. That means I have quite a bit of oversupply, so I don't need to build any foresters anytime soon. Something like charcoal, plus 14, that's a good amount. If I build a bunch of homes, I'm going to need more charcoal supply, but for now, 14 is a good number. It gives me a buffer. It doesn't mean I have a ton of people or resources tied up in a wasteful enterprise. And with that out of the way, this is a great time for the next tip. Raise taxes. The default tax rate is 20%. And as you can see, having a lower tax rate makes people happier. But having a higher tax rate can make them sad. I've personally found that the sweet spot is 30 to 40%. Because look, at 20%, 44 gold a year. At 40%, 88. I have doubled my tax income, and it's trending a little bit down because the taxes are higher. I'll go down to 56 happiness. Alternatively, I could get 50% more. Same happiness, more or less, as I had before. It goes down to 60, which is a little bit lower, but it's not that bad. So if I don't need money for a specific thing, I like a tax rate of 30%. I think this is a good default to have. If I do need money for a specific thing, I will raise it to 40, eat the happiness penalty temporarily, and then set it back to 30 later. There are also things you can do to offset this penalty, such as building a temple to Zeus, or establishing a forum. A forum is basically a place where people can gather. It looks pretty, it makes them happy. You build it just like this, and there you go. That'll give a happiness bonus to all these homes. People will be less likely to be upset when they have to pay their taxes. All right, tip number 5, complete divine tasks. You can sort of think of this as the game's tutorial system, because after you establish a temple to each god, they will give you some tasks. So my current task from Jupiter, which I've completed, is to grow my population to 40 citizens. I click complete and I get some favor. I also get a new task, make him an offering of 15 gold, which I can also do, so I click complete and I get more favor. Then for Vulcan, have 2 charcoal makers. Well, I do have 2 charcoal makers, so there you go. Now, offer 19 charcoal. Do I want to do this? This is where having a small oversupply is good, because if I have enough charcoal, I can offer the excess to Vulcan and complete another task. But if all of this charcoal was needed for my homes, I wouldn't be able to do that. So in this case, I can click Make Offering. The next task is to expand to 2 quarries. I already set up one, but remember I was relying on harvesting all those broken rocks around? Well, that's not going to work forever, so I should probably build a second. After all, I have plenty of idle citizens who I can employ. And then I'm going to offer some wheat. Maybe that was a little risky because I only had 25, but my farms, they're about to be harvested, so it should be okay. And Neptune said, make me an offering of 31 wine. Well, currently, I don't really have wine. So how would I get it? This is where the technology tree comes in, where I can see, okay, if I unlock grapevines, and then, oh, I need pottery workshop. So I'd have to unlock clay pit plus pottery workshop. Then I can unlock a winery, and then I can start producing wine. Early on, you should select things here based on your needs, and you should also prioritize key services for your city. So things like the forester and the stone quarry, those are really good early unlocks. So is the tax office, so you can start collecting gold. Something else which I haven't done yet, but very much should, is a fire brigade. These are professional firefighters who will keep my city from burning down. Similarly, a masonry is a building that repairs stuff. Right now, these buildings have been damaged. If I don't do something about that, they will eventually collapse and potentially kill everyone inside. So I should definitely get the stone I need to build a masonry, and probably build one over here in my city center as well. Since these divine tasks act as a bit of a tutorial, you generally can't go too wrong if you're doing each of them in sequence. But because you'll get quite a bit of divine favor, you can also use it to unlock things that the gods aren't specifically asking for, like a small theater. This will boost your happiness, or a food counter, making food distribution easier, or an undertaker, so if anyone dies, they can be given a proper burial at a columbarium or a cemetery. And this will help your city expand while also preventing problems from cropping up. Similarly, you probably want to invest in at least a little bit of military sooner or later because you will get attacked. And you definitely want to unlock aqueducts once you have decent stone production so that you can begin interacting with water services. Though when you're just building with hovels and even small insula, water services aren't as crucial. It's more about setting up the basics like food, wood, warmth, that kind of stuff. And for an example of what you can do with technology, I have all these hovels here. Right now, 5 people can live here. But I also have the small insula, which I can build over the hovels. Right now, you can't build every building on top of every other building, but you can build small insula over hovels. And this effectively upgrades the building, which now has room for more citizens. And I can even build a shop in here, which will now provide services to all the nearby houses. Now, once your town hits a population of 50 or more, you can select a governor. Each governor has different bonuses, and as you progress your city, more will be randomly generated. So we have Servius Tullius Taurus. He's vigilant, meaning there will be less fires, but he's a bureaucrat, more construction costs. In the early phase where you're building a lot of stuff, this is bad. Then there's Quintus Cominius Festus, who is shrewd. You can buy things from merchants more cheaply, which requires the docks, by the way. And he's meticulous, which gives a bonus to tax revenue. Last up, there's Vibius Decimus Sceva, who clearly just has great vibes because he's likable and prudent. Early on, I think I'd go with either Vibius or Quintus. That way I get either the tax revenue or the happiness bonus. But late game, even Servius would be totally fine because if I'm not building a bunch of stuff for the next few years, it's not going to be a big deal. Now, after you elect a governor, they have a 3-year term. So for the next 3 years, this is going to be my governor. At the end of that time, there's going to be a happiness penalty. People are going to say, hey, wait a minute. I don't like this guy anymore. He's been in power too long, and he's getting a little bit corrupt. So you will want to change governors. But you can actually reappoint the current governor. This will reduce any bonuses they give in exchange for allowing you to benefit from their bonuses again. So instead of the plus 10 happiness, I'd get plus 5 happiness. In general, I'd say if a governor has 2 negative traits and you have to appoint them, don't reappoint them. If you have a negative and a positive, as long as the negative isn't a big deal, sometimes you can reappoint them. If you have 2 positive traits, both of which are very beneficial to your city, that's when you should reappoint them. Also, as one other note, don't forget to change your governor when their term's up. People get real unhappy with you. Eventually, you're going to get attacked. Now, early on, the best thing you can do is recruit some militia. This will draw from your population, which isn't ideal, may lead to some job shortages, but it's better than getting raided. Later on, you will want a professional military. That means things like palisade walls, towers, and even professional soldiers. Okay, here we go. The enemy troops have landed, and we engage in combat. Or more accurately, my troops will engage automatically in combat with the enemies, and I get to watch. And since I'm attacking from the high ground, it's not going to go very well for the enemies. So there you go. Invaders fought off. Easy win. Now just disband the militia so people can go back to their jobs. Now, once you unlock a dock, you can begin trading. This happens when a merchant ship arrives. There are 2 options: buy and sell. Sell means taking goods that you have in storage, such as, say, fish. I have an excess of this. I don't need it. I can sell 25 fish for 75 total gold. Or you can buy things. And the nice thing about buying resources from the merchant is you can use it for industries that you haven't established that well in your city, especially if you're buying raw goods, though even finished goods can be purchased. They are just much more expensive. So in this city, I don't really have a solid pork production. I've started doing it, but I don't have a ton. So if I wanted to provide my citizens with pork in the short term, I could buy 300 pork for 2,400 gold, which I can afford because I have 4,000 in my coffers, and I could go from there. Obviously, this is a lot more expensive than if I just needed some wheat. I could buy the same 300 wheat for a mere 300 gold, which is much more affordable. You should always try to set up your own supply chains. You don't want to rely on the merchant ship for everything, but if you want to get a jump start, such as your industry is just starting out and you need a little bit more, you can do that. Or if you have a request from one of the gods and you just want to fulfill it real quick, then you could also use the merchant ship for that. And so that's about it for the basics. But next up, I want to talk about some more advanced things, including water management and a few tips and tricks that I've picked up along the way. Before I do though, a quick reminder that if you've enjoyed the video so far, be sure to leave a like. It really helps out with the YouTube algorithm. And also get subscribed because I'm going to be making more content in the future, whether it's on Nova Roma or other games I play, and you don't want to miss it. Well, the first one is about water management, because water is the lifeblood of your empire, but it's not necessarily straightforward. And I think a lot of people are going to make the mistake that I made when I first started interacting with the water systems, which is that I'd find a nice river, I'd build a source, and then I wouldn't be able to connect it to anything. I would want to connect it to my city, but there'd be this weird 30 degrees thing. What the heck? What's going on? Why is it not working? That is because water flows downhill. So if you start at a low point, like a river, you're going to be endlessly frustrated, where you can do this, and you can kind of do this, and like zigzag your way up slowly, and it still doesn't let you connect, because water must flow downhill. And at first, I thought the water system was very frustrating and obtuse as a result. Turns out, no, I was just kind of doing it wrong. And instead, the thing to do is something like this, making a dam complex to create some sort of retaining lake for the water, and then harvesting it up above your city. If I put a new water source here, well, it's all the way up, so my city is downstream, thus I can connect things pretty much as I want. Like, I can go all the way over here to the coastline. Okay, not if I'm intersecting buildings, but minus the fact that I'm intersecting buildings, I can go all the way to the coastline without any issue at all, because I started at a high point. To do this, you need to unlock dams, and then you just need to kind of build it. So let's say I wanted to dam this section of the river. I might go like this, and as you can see, automatically the water will start to adapt, and it will start to adjust, and it will sometimes spill over your dam. All right, now I've got a nice lake full of water, except the water is still flowing, and it's going to keep flowing and flowing and flowing until, oh, now it's flooding my city again. That's where spillways come in. This is something that you can control, so I can set the height of a spillway. Once the water gets over a certain height, it will automatically flow through any sort of natural channel that's been created. So I could make this dam here, I'd have this nice big lake, or if I set the spillway a little bit lower, I will just have a nice flow of water. I can then build water sources here, which will always have water because it's right near the source, and I can harvest it and send it down to my city. The end result of that, I have this nice water system. Once it gets to the city, of course, build a water tower to store it, and you can even split water among multiple different water towers. So this source here is actually split this way and this way. It's supplying this water tower and this water tower. You only have so much water per city, so you do want to be as efficient with it as possible. And you can get really fancy doing things like placing your water and then building buildings on top, which, I'll be honest, isn't really intended, but it's kind of cool and aesthetic, and I like it, so I've been doing it. You can split sources, all sorts of fun stuff. Just remember, water must flow downhill, so start high, then go low. Also, when it comes to water control, did you know you can make more fertile farmland? So right here, I've got some nice fertile farmland. But over here, it's all barren, and I can't grow crops in barren land. But if I use the raise or lower the level of the ground, something that is unlocked in the technology tree, it's right here, terrain engineering. All right, so it's a little bit difficult to see because it's the winter now. However, I've lowered the ground level. This caused water to spill in, And all of a sudden, all of these tiles, which were previously barren, are now fertile. You can use this to your advantage. If you create channels, water will, of course, naturally follow the path of least resistance and fill that channel. You can use this to irrigate large swaths of the land, generating more farmland, which you can then use to feed your population. There are some limits to this, but in general, I found it to be pretty darn easy to do, at least once I got the hang of it. Next up, I want to talk about radius effects, because there's a lot of buildings that you're going to be constructing which affect things around them. A simple example of this would be a small temple. But something more complex, maybe negative even, would be this graveyard, where the cemetery has a big negative effect because people don't generally like living in cemeteries. So you want to put negative buildings away from your housing, and positive buildings, such as, say, a forum, close to your housing so that the populace gets a benefit. And the important thing to do is always check the radius on a building. Generally, larger buildings have a larger radius. So as you can see here, if I built a small theater, I'd have to put it pretty much right in the center of my housing block for it to hit all of these houses. But if I build a large theater, the radius is much bigger, to a point where I can put it off to the side here, and not only will it hit all of these houses, but it's going to hit everything over here as well. So if I have a couple houses mixed in, well, guess what? They get all the benefits. Another building that I like nesting in among my houses is a large bakery, or a bakery of any size really, because the fresh bread provides a happiness bonus. So the bigger one, larger radius, the smaller one, a nice little radius. Something else to be very careful of is public toilets, because people need a place to go when they're on the go. And otherwise, your streets are going to get filthy. There's a couple spots here that aren't quite perfect in this city layout, but in general, I have good coverage, and it's because I'm building them all over the place to make sure I have enough coverage by checking the radius. Now, if you were looking closely, you might have noticed a difference between the city I'm showing now and the one I was showing before. Not just that it's on a big island instead of a small island, but also the roads. Stone roads allow your citizens to travel faster than on regular roads. However, a regular road costs 2 wood. It's certainly better than just walking, and it does allow you to expand your city. Stone roads cost 8 stone, which is significantly more, and 2 gold. But people can travel faster. This will allow you to set up transport networks. For that, you need a couple of warehouses, and you also need the transport cart technology. So let's build one and demonstrate it. So recently, to get pork into my city, I built some swine herds. And in addition, I built a small granary to hold that pork. But here's the thing. That pork is going to be used across my city. The houses here have relatively easy access to it. What about the houses over here? Well, they're going to have to go a pretty long way. So this is where the transport cart comes in. I can start by selecting a warehouse, or in this case a granary, and going to the Logistics tab. I then set this to 100. I want there to be 100 pork in this granary at all times. And my supplier is going to be this granary over here. I've now created a supply route from here over to here. And by going back to the Logistics tab, as you can see, this has been established. And so now I select a transport cart, and I assign it to this route. So now this cart will go from here, pick up pork, and transport it here. As long as I supply enough pork, there should always be 100 here, and the cart will ensure that. This is how you can set up some advanced trade networks across your city, so the goods get where they need to be and don't end up stuck where they're produced. Now, the last thing I want to talk about are some of the additional effects you can get if you invest into the gods. Because there's actually 3 types of temple. The small temple, which is unlocked at the start of the game, the large temple, and the grand temple. Each of these have a different effect. It's not simply make the god happy, happier, happiest, though it does do that as well. So, for example, a small temple to Jupiter, who I may have called Zeus previously in my video, gives happiness in a 5-tile radius, good for building near homes. But what about a medium, or I guess large temple to Jupiter. This allows you to consult the gods, where you can see how happy is Jupiter with my current city. The expected level of attention is here. The current level of attention is here. He's pretty happy. And I can hold festivals. This will generate 5 favor, and it costs about 600 gold, 130 wine, 130 grapes. The exact requirements here depends a bit on your population and also which god you're holding a festival to. In addition, if you have a forum, such as here, you can get additional happiness from the festival. I never felt the need to min-max this, but if you need a happiness bonus real quick, you can absolutely build a larger forum next to one of your large temples, and then just click Hold Festival. By the way, this is how you unlock more buildings after you have finished using or completing all of the divine tasks. But there's one more type of temple, the Grand Temple. And that's where things get even more interesting, because each Grand Temple has a unique effect. So the Grand Temple to Ceres, for example, consumes 3 favor to feed all of your citizens instantly. She is the goddess of the harvest, after all. Next, there's the Grand Temple to Jupiter, where you'll calm the weather. This one is particularly helpful because there's no actual way to counteract droughts. You just kind of have to deal with it. And droughts can be particularly problematic because the more you build your city up, the more water you're going to use. And if you're using a ton of water during a drought, well, that's not going to work because the water simply isn't available. So instead of eating the penalty and risking a plague breaking out in your city, appease Jupiter and he can fix the problem for you. Nothing like a little divine intervention. Then for Mars, your troops become stronger. This is good when you're getting attacked. For Vulcan, you can extinguish all fires within the city. I have not actually used this one yet because I've never had a fire serious enough, but if there's ever a wildfire issue, definitely going to use that. And last up, which I used fairly recently, I harnessed the power of Neptune to instantly smite all of the invading ships. Yeah, why build an army and deal with invaders when you can just use divine intervention to blast them from the sky? This is one of the more expensive options, though, so, if it's not a threatening force, maybe just have your troops deal with it. And so that's everything I've learned so far about Nova Roma. I've certainly been making a lot less mistakes now than I was in the beginning. Things like having my warehouses just get full of one type of good and then being unable to store stuff. Or expanding my city too quickly and then I don't have water so everything burns down. Or I don't have workers and so everyone gets sad and then my city burns down. Or I just don't manage my water correctly and I think the water system sucks when I was just kind of doing it wrong. All of these things are where I've learned from my mistakes, but I'm sure that I don't know everything there is to know about Nova Roma. So if you've been playing the game a lot, please do share some of your experiences down in the comments below. Now, at the moment, I don't have any other guides on Nova Roma, but if you want to know my thoughts on the game as a whole, at least from the early access launch, then I'll leave that up in the card and down below. You can watch it next. Also, if you want to see any of my thoughts on other games, head over to my Steam Curator page, which is linked down below, where I talk about pretty much everything I play, even if it's just a short review that does have links to all of my video reviews as well. For now, thank you very much for watching to the end. I'm glad you've enjoyed, good luck on your Nova Roma journey, and I'll see you in the next one.